Hi, welcome to Awake Ones. Today we're going to be talking about advice. I'm Sally Poinsett-Nash.
I'm Alexandra Wenman.
And I'm Lorraine Flaherty.
So we're going to be talking about giving advice, and I think we're all of the consensus that the best advice is to not give advice. And for me, I think working for years and years as an advisor,
You couldn't avoid it then, could you?
couldn't avoid it, but also, it's not a healthy place to be in. If you're giving advice to people all the time, you're being held accountable for your opinion. Something that you might do is not necessarily what they might do, and it can cause all sorts of problems, whether it's in personal relationships, professional relationships, and I think it's freely given. Advice is freely given, even when it's not asked for. So yeah, I'd like to know, Lorraine, give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on giving advice.
Yeah.
Give me your advice.
Yeah, I'll give you advice about how not to give advice.
What advice would you give to someone giving advice?
As you so rightly said, I think the best way to deal with advice is to just give it. And when in the role of a therapist, which and all of us in some form or another are there at sort of helping people, one of the things I've realised over the years that is the most important thing is that I've now reframed who I am and what I do as just a guide for people. And in that guidance, it's possible to actually give people options and give people choices of things that they do. But telling people what to do, telling people what it is that you think that they should do, answering when people ask you what it is that they think you should do is just such a minefield, and it never works. It never works, because if you give somebody advice and they take it and then it works, then potentially you are held kind of accountable for that, and it's almost as though it was your efforts.
That's why you have liability insurance
Yes.
in business.
If you give somebody advice and they take it and then it all goes horribly wrong, you are then accountable. You are the one that is going to be responsible for the outcome. If you give people advice and they choose not to take it and things go well, then you were wrong in the advice that you gave them originally. And if they do the opposite to what you said and things don't work out for them and it all goes horribly wrong, they will then always remember the fact that you were the one that told them the other thing to do, and they know that you know that they didn't do it. And therefore it is always going to be creating bad energy somewhere in the grand scheme of things. And I remember years ago having a conversation with my therapist when I was doing psychosynthesis many years ago, and which is a kind of spiritual psychotherapy. And I remember one of the most profound sessions that I had with her when I'd realised, and I think I've talked about this before, when I spent a lot of time in my younger years being the agony aunt and being the go-to person that people would come to for advice, because I think I was always able to see things from different perspectives, and I think all of us have a wider view, a bigger picture way of looking at things. So I gave advice a lot and could never understand why I was always the enemy at the end of it, and why I was kind of resented by people who seemed to think that I thought I was a bit of a know-it-all when I thought I was just being really, really helpful. And I remember her pointing out to me that if it wasn't my job officially, and that if this wasn't something that had been actually formally put together, and that there was some sort of, not necessarily a formal contract, but some official capacity in which this advice was being given. If it wasn't my job, then I had no right to interfere. And that stayed with me. So now I'm really conscious of what's my job and what isn't my job. And I think going in and becoming a therapist, where actually it officially became my job, where there was an exchange and somebody was asking for help, created a boundary, and we've talked about boundaries before, around it, a safer boundary, but I'm still really conscious that I don't give advice. And another thing that I realised was that when people, because we all come to each other when we've got stuff going on, and you know, people want help and advice about things. And I realised that a much better way of framing things was to say, well, if it was me, what I would do is such and such, and then it gives people the option to make their own choices and decisions.
The reframe is great.
The reframe is great. And again, we know that Milton Erickson was brilliant at giving people options and ways of doing things that meant he never told people what to do, ever. And he framed everything by his friend John, who I'm sure I've talked about before. John, who had every experience known to man, and always seemed to find a solution that would help them. So he never gave anybody advice, but he just gave them different versions, different options.
But it is challenging not to slip back into
so hard.
Advice giving.
When you care about somebody and somebody turns up and they have a problem, whether it's with a relationship or whether it is with job choices or career choices, when you're not in it and you are able to see the wood for the trees, it's so easy for you to know exactly what it is that person needs to do to change things for the better. But as we know from the work that we do, all of us here on the planet right now are here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to evolve. So we have to remember that everything a person is experiencing is exactly what they're meant to be going through. And that is so challenging to just stay out of it. And particularly when, as you said, advice is not asked for as well. You know, that's the bit that I've had to really learn to step back and just trust that people will work it out for themselves. And I think when you do that, you know, now rather than give advice, I'd rather say to people, look, I trust you to do whatever it is that's going to be right for you. You know, I trust whatever choice and decision that you're going to make, and actually ask questions rather than give answers, so that people can actually work out the solution for themselves. I think that's a much better way to do it.
I agree, putting it back to them.
Putting it back to them.
I had when I used to, for a period of time, give readings, or I was giving angel readings and angel guidance and channel readings. And exactly the same thing, when people would come into my room with this almost needy, tell me what I have to do, please tell me what's... And I've never said that I do prophecy or traditional fortune telling, but this is kind of what people come in with the expectation of, because that's the kind of old paradigm of how it works, is you see for them and then you tell, oh, well, you should do this. And I could never really bring myself to do it. And any time I got tempted to do it, those people were always the ones that would come back at you. But you said this and it didn't work out that way. But what people don't realise is when you're doing a reading, you're only able to pick up on their energy at that given moment, and we have free will. So any advice, you know, that you give is kind of, I would always try to reframe it as more like guidance and options, as you say. I would often do readings where it was like, well, it could go this way or it could go this way, and it depends on how you play it. And more, the work that I've ended up doing is kind of putting it back to the person, and what does your inner self say? What does your higher self say? What do you feel is right for you? Because it's an absolute minefield. It's like, if you give the advice and they take it and it ends up being wrong, which we know there's never any wrong choice anyway, but if they perceive it as wrong, then they can hold you accountable instead of themselves. So that was one experience that I had. It's also in the way of giving the guidance or giving the advice. And there's one experience that I had where I was doing a reading for somebody. This person had expected it to be fortune telling and wanted to know that he was going to make lots of money, and that what he was doing, which was completely unethical, was absolutely fine. And I very lovingly said, I don't think this is the right path for you. And he actually decided that he wasn't going to pay for the reading or the session, and was given, in the place I was working, was then given a free reading with another reader who gave him the exact same advice or guidance, I have to say, but did it in a different way.
Yeah.
So in no uncertain terms told him to pull his socks up and get on with it. And it was actually in the way that the guidance was given that it was taken as well. So I think in many ways, because I'd given the advice for the first thing, which was probably not my place to give it, but I'd been almost too soft in giving it, or I'd sort of already put myself in the position of, oh, they can throw the blame at me if I don't tell them what they want to hear, because you often get that in our work as healers and therapists, people coming to hear what they want to hear, and if you don't tell them that, it's like, sorry, no, make you do the work, not for me to do.
I think when I've had readings, I've had a lot of readings over the years with different people for different reasons at different times, and when it's been about channeling messages from, my loved ones that have passed and crossed over, and that always seems to be spot on. But because I evolve so quickly and I make decisions very quickly, I'm constantly changing. I don't think any advice or guidance that's been given to me has ever really worked out, because my energy's been read in that moment. Well, a week later, a day later, I've decided to do something completely different.
100%.
And that generally is not why I would go for a reading these days. It took me a while to work it out, but I think they're reading you at that time, as far as I understand.
I mean, the energy's quickening so much now anyway, that I do readings for myself, but so I'll be like, oh, something's coming up, and before you know it, it's passed and it's done with, and it's shifted, or you haven't gone down that route anyway. So it's
I do readings for myself, but just as a kind of a guide rather than
not to hold on to.
Absolutely have to follow this. I think that's the key.
Because you can go looking for it too.
And of course you want to hear what you want to hear.
And I think one of the key things is that as we are changing and evolving, is the idea of coming back into trusting ourselves. And I think that is the most important part of what we need to do as guides, as healers, therapists, as people that are moving forward, is to encourage people to trust themselves and encourage them to trust their own inner guidance. And there's so many different ways and different tools and techniques that people can use to do that. So we've talked about pendulums before, where you can tune in.
I've started using a pendulum and I find it super useful.
Yeah.
Because my gut feeling and my instinct is really strong, and then I will check in with the pendulum. Again, just use it as a check-in, not as a should I turn left or should I turn right?
Oh, they'll tell you when you're not allowed to use them anymore too. My pendulum this morning, I had a client, at the end of the session, we broke a massive contract, and my pendulum broke in half, and half of it went flying across the room. And I was like, oh, and it's the third time it's done it. But the pendulum's a lot lighter without the extra bit on the bottom. I was like, do you feel lighter? To my client, yeah. I think we got rid of that extra, and then it still works. So I was like, do I need a new pendulum? Yes. Time for an upgrade. And also they'll stop working if you're relying on them too much. Again, like you rely on another person for advice. If you're sitting there going, tell me, do I need to do? Always has to come back to you, to your guidance.
Yeah. And I've just been using it for, I suppose, career stuff and travel and things that I've got coming up. But I wouldn't use it like, what should I wear today? Should I wear this today? Should I wear that today? I'm not really...
What should I throw out in my wardrobe? I've actually done that. That's really embarrassing. Because I don't want to throw anything away.
I did use it for the seats I booked to come to LA, so we'll see if I get good seats.
Yeah, but also acknowledging that, which I come back to all the time, that when people are facing challenges in their lives, so there's something that they want advice from somebody about, that the answer is inside them. It isn't outside. And so anybody that is giving advice is only giving an opinion, they're only giving an idea that's based on their own experiences, their own values, their own beliefs. And because we're all so different as individuals and as human beings, there isn't any one solution that is going to fit all. And I think that's where a lot of the problems come in with advice, because we see things
through our
lens, and everybody's lens is different. So it's why people should just go back to finding their own answers. And sometimes that does mean going within. Sometimes it does mean just actually taking time out to sit and think things through properly, which in our busy world where there are so many distractions constantly, I mean, how many people actually sit down and just go into that silent space to ask questions anymore. I mean, it's constant, isn't it? Whether it's the mobile, whether it's television, whether it's radio, whether it's music.
Mm.
You know, sometimes the best way to find the answer to the problem is just go and sit by nature or sit in nature.
Because your feelings will always tell you, you know. I always
Yeah.
do this thing, like the pendulum, this what I call internal dowsing, and it's a bit like kinesiology, I suppose. We've talked
Yeah.
about these different techniques before, but it's I always just go within, I come right into my centre, and I feel like if you've got a few options, just say, right, what feels right? Because often the logical thing, that everyone gives the advice of, oh, you should do this. I mean, how often have you taken people's advice and it's been the wrong thing for you? Always ask, right, what feels right for me? And your feelings might not make logical sense, but they will always, I've never without fail have my feelings not worked, you know. I've made decisions based on logic before, even though something felt off and it's been the completely wrong thing. Well, there's never a wrong thing, again, obviously, but it's been a longer path around to where I've needed to be. But if I've listened to my feelings and gone, well, against all the advice, against what everyone says, against, you know, what I think I should be doing, against, you know, we often make decisions based on material or financial needs.
Of course.
And sometimes if you go, right, actually, I'm going to park the money thing and just follow my heart or follow my calling, the money will end up dropping in your lap anyway, and you'll be completely supported by the universe. If I hadn't done that, I would not be doing the work I'm doing today. I'd still be working in magazines. So,
And I think finding out the things that other people have done is a great way of actually learning, because there are going to be people out there who have skills or have already succeeded, who've already done things that you want to do. So I think that not necessarily advice, but learning from other people's experiences is a really good way to go. If you're wanting to do something and somebody's already excelled in it, then go hear their story, but don't ask them to tell you what it is that you need to do so that you can replicate what they've done. Hear the story and then take the information from it so that you can then make your own choices. I think that is one of the best ways to go.
Yeah, and taking advice from sort of lots of people's stories, so just drawing your own pieces of advice rather than what they are giving you as advice. You know, I think taking your own advice is good advice.
Sally did a really good little session with us recently, just about this, about Awake Ones and our rebranding. And it was wonderful because we just sat down and you just threw a load of questions at us. Like,
yeah,
what,
I think the key is always asking good
Yeah.
questions, and that goes for asking yourself good questions as well, and knowing that sometimes you're going to be answering those questions based on what you want to hear.
Yeah.
It's not about what you want to hear, it's about what is the answer to that question.
Yeah. And I did a session with somebody recently who may perhaps be not making the best choices in certain areas of their life. And one of the things that I did, rather than give advice, which was what was wanted, which I refused, point blank, and particularly when it required me to give a perspective on another person that was in this person's life. You know, did I think that they were going to be right for them or a good person? I pointed out that actually if there were challenges, it was just the universe showing them that there was stuff that needed to be healed within them, and whatever it was that they were seeing in the other person was just going to be a reflection of an area of themselves that needed to be healed. But I put them into hypnosis or a focused state of attention, and then I got them to literally experience different versions of the future. So I got them to go in, because higher mind knows. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out if you really took the time out to think about where life is going to take you if you stay on the same path, making the same choices. And sometimes you need to go in and get a bit of a reality check. You know, you need to take the blinkers off, because especially some habits or some things that we do them because we've always done them, even though we know that they're not necessarily the best for us. And sometimes there's a little part inside that can go into denial and convince us that no, this thing is good, it makes you feel good in this moment in time, without looking at the longer term picture, without actually looking at the outcome. And so normally when I do future life work, I normally take people about 5 years into the future to get perspective. But if I'm working with let's say, habits or addictions that are, you know, a little less savoury, I like to go a bit further, like 10 or 15 years. And actually what happened in this session the other day was that my client said, I'm not here. 10 or 15 years. I'm not around. I'm not going to make it. And it was in that moment in time a really big wake-up call to just understand the seriousness of the choices that were being made. And what that does then is to the part of them inside that has been saying, oh no, you know, this thing will make you feel good. Do it. There's suddenly an awareness for even the part running the program that, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all, which means that you can then renegotiate with the inner world to make changes. And then of course I was able to get them to see what the future would be like if they made different choices. And I didn't make any suggestions about what those choices were going to be. I just said, just allow your higher self to work out what would be a better way of living, better way of doing things, and let's just see what that future would be like. And of course it was bright and it was happy and it was joyous and it was joyful. And I said, well, your higher self knows what choices need to be made. So without giving it any advice whatsoever, we were able to get them to see what needs to be done.
That's the amazing thing, isn't it? You can change your life in a split second, less than a second, by the choice that you make, and you have the thought to make that choice right before you make it.
Yeah.
I always think the best course of action for myself, if you want to follow this advice, you can, is to just...
It's not advice.
Just to follow your joy. Like, I just think in any given moment, your body tells you, you know, if there's constriction or tightness or there's anxiety or there's something going on where it's just like, oh, I feel I've got to do this because I feel like, what's going to make us happy as humans? We think we've got to make choices based on what other people think, what other people feel. We often make decisions based around what people think of us, which is a huge thing that I've dealt with in my work and in my life. You know, do people think I'm crazy? Oh my God. Well, I think I'm out and proud. out of the spiritual closet. But it's just like, do what makes you happy. It makes me happy to do the work that I do and to follow that joy and to be curious about everything that is out there in this universe. But that might not be somebody else's path, and I'm not here to push that on anybody. I'm just following my joy. And I think that the more that you follow your joy and your happiness and follow what kind of lightens you up, that is enlightenment. It's lightness of being. So, and no one can tell you what that is for you. Not me, not Laurie, not Sally. Nobody can tell you what's going to make you happy, because it might be a completely different thing to what it is for us.
Yeah.
So,
I think when you're making those changes in the first instance, sometimes it doesn't feel like joy because it's new. You don't know it. You're a bit scared. You know, anxiety comes into play. So it's deciphering, really sitting with those feelings and knowing, is it genuine anxiety or is it anxiety because I'm going through change?
Is it excitement? Sometimes excitement can feel like anxiety too. It's like part of you like is going, I need to do this, but the old part of you is going, oh crap, what are you doing?
I had this. I mean, I battled with ego and soul for a long time. You know, my ego was like, you're a hotshot in the business world. Why are you stepping away from this? And my soul's going, I'm just dying over there. I need to do something different. And the things that my soul wanted to do and the things my ego wanted to do, it's a huge gap between the two things.
But if you don't follow the advice of your higher self, sometimes it will make the decision for you, right?
Well, it did make the decision. Yeah, it did make the decision for me, and I really struggled to stay with it, but I didn't actually have a choice at that point. And it didn't feel good, and it didn't feel like joy. But to think about going back to doing what I used to do, that definitely is not joy. What I'm doing now, even though it's haphazard and it's a bit all over the place, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying my life, and it's not working for somebody else, you know, driving that, and the ego.
I'm so with you there.
But yeah, I think in those early stages for me it was really difficult to decipher, is this joy Am I enjoying this?
Yeah.
Or am I about to have a breakdown?
But it is hard. I think a lot of people have found the last few years, like, a lot kind of breaking away or collapsing away that wasn't working for them, and you don't always know, but it's like the higher self knows. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't always feel like it's following your joy. Maybe it's more about the trust that Laurie was talking about, staying in trust and going, this is, if it feels right, and it might not feel right at that moment, but when the universe kind of takes it out of your hands, that's when I think the trust kicks in, that something bigger is at play here, and I have to stay in trust, and maybe we just need to ride it out until the joy reveals itself at the end. Because I'm like you, like when I look back at stuff that's happened, I would not have chosen it, but I would never change it.
And I wouldn't go back.
That's
That's really my barrier all the time. It's like, could I go back and do that? It's like, I can't. It's not that I won't.
No.
I don't use the word can't very often. I can't. I just can't.
Yeah.
And can't be the person. Like,
No.
it can't shoehorn yourself back into that role either.
Once you've broken out of it and you're trying to get back into the shell, it's like, it won't let you back in. So yeah, I think it's, your own advice at that time is maybe not where it should be. And I've done some work with you with higher self, because actually my higher self knows. My logical self was all over the place.
And that is the thing as well, isn't it? Is that our mind, our brain, tells us stories. It will try and find reasons. It will try and find a logical answer as to why things are happening, and it's not always the truth, because sometimes it is just scouting through previous experiences. And if the data hard drive in the back of your mind is filled with some very bad versions of possibilities and experiences, then your potential view of the future isn't going to be so great. So sometimes we need to do a bit of clutter clearing as well, and actually go in and rewrite some of those programs, some of those beliefs and ideas, so that we can make different decisions, different choices. Because if you grew up in a world where there was a lot of fear and there was a lot of anxiety and worry about the sort of safety or security of the world, then every time you try to make a change or you try to make different choices, it's like doing a little internal Google search, and if it comes back and says, no, it's not safe out there, then the chances are your ability to move forward is going to be impeded, because protection mechanism self is going to kick in and say, no, don't do that, it's not safe. And so when people are finding themselves caught up in cycles and patterns of things not working, my guess is usually that there is something going on behind the scenes that's blocking it. So again, going in and making sure that the inner beliefs, not the outer, not the stories, not the logic, but that the inner world is supporting, and that the inner world is backing you up. So any work that can be done to assess that.
Yeah, I think by working with that higher mind, if you can't access it and there's someone around you that can, or someone else has seen someone and you've seen a difference in them. For me, when I was in that crazy sort of collapse of logic, just finding someone to help me access higher mind, it wasn't advice. I needed to hear it from myself.
And so again, and we're not saying don't actually get help. We are saying, we're definitely saying get help.
Sometimes your guidance is to go and get guidance.
Yeah, but it's about taking full responsibility for the choices that are made, and knowing that the only person that can make decisions, or the only person who you really need to listen to, is yourself. I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? The answers to any challenge or problems that you have, the answers are inside you. Nobody else has the answer. Nobody else can give it to you. And so it's about finding whichever method, whichever means, whichever assistance or help that might be out there. And there are some great people out there with some fantastic tools. There are so many more tools that are being created that help you go within and find the answers that you need. But I think we have to learn that the buck stops with self.
And that's total empowerment, isn't it? Taking back your power, knowing that you have all the answers you need inside you, as Laurie said, and learning how to navigate it. Like, part of the reason why I know why I went into the work I do was for myself. I accidentally went into healing and therapy. I didn't set out to do this, and I don't think you did either.
Nope.
And it's like, I just went in because I was looking for answers for myself, and then I learned how to do it for myself. And that's the most empowering thing I think I've ever done for myself. So I really recommend, learning some of these tools for yourself as well,
Yeah, and also, if you haven't learned them yet, reaching out, talking to people that who you've seen a change in.
Yeah.
Who did they go and see?
Yeah.
What did they, what was their experience? Listen to their stories. And I don't think there's one person, you may get this in what you do, where people become reliant upon you, and actually there's a different person for different things at different times. It's not always the same person.
We're always recommending other people as well.
Yeah.
And we've got we know so many other healers and therapists, and if I don't think I'm the right person for someone, I always hand them over, or I'll suggest they go see somebody else.
Yeah.
And I've also had times where I've had to say no to people too, like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna work with you anymore, because if they are giving their power away, it's not healthy.
No.
Yeah. So take back your power.
Stop listening to others.
Don't take our advice.
Go listen
Take
to yourself.
Yeah, and just trust that everything that you need is inside you already. That's, I think, the answer to it all. Trust yourself.
So,
On that note.
thank you for watching Awake Ones.
Thank you for watching.